So for today's episode of Ancient DOS Games, we're taking a look at the original release of Wheel of Fortune, a game I've owned since childhood, and even still have the original discs for, as pictured here. Now, you might be looking at this and be like, you're seriously going to prattle on for 15 minutes about something you could explain in 3? Well, not so fast. Remember, I like to get technical about things, and there's a surprising amount of technicalities to go into with this original adaptation of the popular game show. But yeah, the actual gameplay is incredibly simple, so we're not going to be spending a huge amount of time talking about it. But to give you an idea of what to expect from the game as a whole, it plays about as you would expect at its most basic level, though it's using the rules as they were in the late 80s, just after they removed the shopping rounds from the show. Which, yeah, if you're used to only seeing modern Wheel of Fortune, it used to be that contestants spent their money on prizes between rounds and special shopping segments. Now, those segments were removed shortly before this game was developed. There's other more minor differences in the rules too compared to modern iterations of the show, but we'll go over those as we go along. This particular release of Wheel of Fortune was developed and published by ShareData in 1987, though apparently another company called Timely Publications was involved with this project, though other than their existence, I can't really figure out what exactly their involvement was. As expected, this is a 1 to 3 player game show adaptation, and it supports CGA 320x200 4-color graphics and PC speaker sound. As for its current release date, it's still commercial, and finding this specific release of the game is extremely difficult, though not necessarily desirable unless you're intending to build a collection of Wheel of Fortune games. The thing is, there's numerous versions of Wheel of Fortune out there, many for DOS, but many modern ones for Windows too, along with for many consoles. So if you just want to play a Wheel of Fortune game, you're pretty much good with any of them. You don't need this specific version. Or, if you just want to play the game in this original CGA style and aren't picky about the exact release, just keep your eyes open for any of the 3 ShareData releases of Wheel of Fortune, as all 3 editions released by ShareData play exactly the same, just have different puzzles. Best I could find prior to this review was a boxed copy of the 2nd edition ShareData release for $10. And keep the publisher in mind too when searching, as the editions reset back to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd every time the publisher was changed, as more Wheel of Fortune games were made by different publishers. For those of you unfamiliar with Wheel of Fortune, or the old rules used in this version of the game, here's how it works. The game is played between 3 contestants, who take turns trying to figure out a missing letters puzzle, kinda like Hangman. The only hint they're given is a simple description of what the puzzle refers to, such as a person, place, or thing, but the description can sometimes be more specific things, like saying things plural instead of thing, or a landmark instead of a place. In the original Wheel of Fortune, these hints were always vague by intent, but in modern iterations of the game, the hints are frequently more specific. When it's a contestant's turn, they have 3 options: spin the wheel, buy a vowel, or solve the puzzle. After spinning the wheel, it will typically land on a space with a monetary value on it, indicating how much money each letter revealed is worth. The contestant then guesses a letter, and if any of that letter are present, they'll be revealed, and money will be awarded for each. Then the contestant gets another turn. However, if the letter isn't in the puzzle at all, their turn ends and play proceeds to the next contestant. However, because of how powerful and common vowels are in the puzzles, you cannot spin to reveal them. You have to buy them. Each vowel costs $250 from the current round's earnings, so a player is completely unable to reveal any vowels until they've guessed at least 1 consonant successfully. And even then, it has to be enough to reach that $250 mark. If you attempt to buy a vowel and none are present, again, your turn ends. It's also important to note that Y is never considered a vowel in this game, just for sake of everyone's sanity. If you know what's hidden on the board though, and feel you've earned enough money in the round that it's time to end it, you can solve the puzzle on your turn. If you get the solution wrong, you simply lose your turn, but if you get it right, the round ends and all the money you've accumulated for that round goes into your total earnings for the day, which are used to determine who becomes champion and advances to the bonus round once 3 rounds have been played. One particular rule that's important to keep in mind about solving the puzzle is that no matter how much money you end the round with, there's a minimum round earnings of $200 for the winner of the round. So if you have less than $200 after solving the puzzle, you'll be bumped up to $200 for the round. The champion who banked the most money after 3 rounds then proceeds to the bonus round, where they're given a small puzzle, can reveal a total of 5 consonants and 1 vowel, then are given 30 seconds to try and figure out what it is. This is somewhat different from modern iterations, where the letters R, S, T, L, N, and E are given by default, and the champion instead chooses an extra 3 consonants and 1 vowel to go with that. Also in the television show, the champion would pick a prize card prior to starting the bonus round, which would then be opened after the bonus round, win or lose, to reveal what the prize was. Here in this DOS game, you select a specific prize ahead of time, and if you win, the value of that prize is added to your final score and your champion status. As far as I know, there's no differences between any of the prizes, so feel free to always just go for that dream vacation to get the most money possible. The last thing to mention about the rules are the special spaces on the wheel. The free spin space in the first round lets you pick up a free spin token. At the end of any turn, when your play would normally pass to the next contestant, if you have a free spin and you want to keep your turn, you can use it and then get your turn back. The lose a turn spaces simply end your turn, simple enough. The bankrupt spaces, though, are very nasty, as you not only lose your turn, but any money you've accumulated for the round is also lost, though any money you've banked from previous rounds is safe and sound. Anyways, that's it for the rules, but let's dive a bit deeper into this thing. Although I haven't revealed how Season 6 of Ancient DOS Games is going to work yet, I think it's time to give you all a taste of one of the new features that's going to be appearing, where we take a much deeper look into specific game mechanics and analyze them to try and determine various aspects of the design which have been hidden from the player. For starters, let's talk about the AI. Now, given that this game must be played with 3 contestants, it stands to reason that people would want an AI to play against. But how in the world do you develop an AI for a game like this? The answer is by making it feel as human as possible. The AI in this game is doing a lot of stuff in the background to mimic human behavior to a degree. When the puzzle is still relatively hidden, the AI will pick letters it feels are most common in general, but as letters get successfully revealed, the AI will continue to pare things down and continue deciding which letters it wants to select based on how much has been revealed. Now, if it decides the most likely letter to be present is a vowel, and it has the money to buy one, it'll do so. If only vowels are left, or there's only a relatively small number of unrevealed letters, it'll successfully solve the puzzle every time. The only trick is that the AI may mimic human behavior fairly well in terms of guessing letters, but it doesn't mimic strategy at all. For instance, let's say that it's the final round, and there's a lot of letters in the puzzle. You're leading with $3,000 banked, and it's one of the AI contestants' turns. It's making spins, getting money, it's managed to get up to about $2,700. A spin in the letter would probably break $3,000 and make it possible for the AI to beat you. But if there's barely any letters left, they may decide to just solve the puzzle, even though it's the final round and they have no chance of becoming champion if they solve it in that moment. I know it seems like Wheel of Fortune is a lot of luck, but there is some level of strategy in terms of making things difficult for the other players and better for yourself. But the AI doesn't do any of that, it just focuses on the puzzles. However, there's something random about the AI. Every so often, you may see the AI make incredibly stupid mistakes, like guessing a letter that's already been selected, or trying to solve the puzzle when there's still lots of hidden letters, and then inputting random garbage characters. And it's something I wish I was able to capture footage of, but didn't get a chance to because it's super rare. And believe it or not, this is all intentional. Every time the AI takes a turn, there's a 1-second delay between each of its actions. If you see the AI take an action instantly, without waiting that extra second, it's because the AI has been overridden to instead produce a completely random result. It's very rare and typically only happens once or twice per set of 3 rounds if you're playing solo against 2 computer opponents, and it's always kind of weird when it happens. But speaking of random chance, there's one thing that's always bugged me. It seems like that wheel never lands on the free spins in the first round when you want it to, and never lands on the $5,000 space in the final round, or bankrupts or loses your turns frequently. It's almost as though that wheel isn't 100% random. Could it be that the game is trolling the player? Well, I took a really deep look into this. First of all, the way the game spins the wheel is interesting. There's a large number of delay values the wheel cycles through during a spin, ultimately reaching the last delay value and ending the spin. Now for each delay value, there's a random range of spaces the wheel will advance through before going to the next delay value. The final result of all this randomization is that the wheel will always make, at the absolute minimum, one full revolution, as per the rules of the actual game show, but it can only advance up to 50% further than this. So no matter what, every time you spin the wheel, it will land either on the space it's currently on, or up to 12 spaces ahead at most, and actually does average out to between 3 and 9 spaces ahead of where it was. Now once you know this is happening, you can get a better idea of when it's a good idea to spin for more cash when you know the puzzle, or to just solve it and get it over with. But is even this aspect random enough to be viable? Well, I decided to put it to the test. I scrubbed through all of my footage at high speed and recorded each and every space the wheel landed on across 15 sets worth of gameplay, then did some rapid fire stuff to balance out all the results to 240 spins for each round, exactly 10 times the number of spaces on the wheel. Now for those curious, the rapid fire stuff kind of looked like this. Once I had all this data, I charted it all, along with what the expected averages should be for every space the wheel could land on. The results were interesting to say the least. Well, interesting in that what I was perceiving as the game being unfair was just my imagination, not indicative of the actual odds at all. In fact, looking at these results graphed like this, I'd say the wheel is actually spinning significantly random enough. But it does still work the way I described earlier, in that the ultimate resting spot will always be between 0 to 12 spaces ahead of where it was. So do keep that in mind when you make your spins. Lastly, I had a unique opportunity to answer a pertinent question I always have with stuff like this. What happens if you tie? Well, the game does indeed recognize a tied game state at the end of the third round, and you'll never believe what the result is. I swear, what you're about to see is uncut and unedited, short of the ADG badge in the corner. You watching? Yeah, the game literally starts over on round 1 while keeping the state of the contestants the same as how it ended. You literally have to play another 3 rounds to break the tie. And heck, whoever lost can theoretically make a comeback in this scenario. It even almost happened when they nailed a $10,000 guess in the final round. Overall, this plays well, and is very faithful to the Wheel of Fortune game show. Definitely something worth owning if you're a fan of the show. But it still suffers from a key problem most game show adaptations suffer from. You don't actually win anything. One of the main ingredients to a successful game show are prizes. If the entire reason for playing a game show was just prestige, then no one would care. It's about the chance to win things through a combination of skill, strategy, and luck. You can still test your skill, strategy, and luck with digitized versions of these game shows, but without the thrill of winning real prizes, there's ultimately no point to it, and the end result just leaves you feeling unfulfilled. This isn't the fault of Wheel of Fortune in particular. Almost every game show adapted into a video game suffers this fate. But don't get me wrong, there are a few exceptions, but this is not one of them. The irony, though, is when game shows try to adapt themselves off of specific video games or board games, because that never works well either. Any of you who ever watched that old Scrabble game show? Yeah, it didn't play anything like Scrabble, and while it did moderately well in the 80s, the attempt to bring it back in the 90s only lasted a few months. The ultimate reason for playing video games and board games is very different than the ultimate reason for participating in game shows, and they really don't want to have anything to do with each other. But hey, it didn't stop the plethora of such crossovers from existing in bargain bins across the continent. Yep, just leave cycle set to auto and the game will run perfectly fine. In fact, this game times itself out pretty well given its age, which is good considering timing is, well, kind of important for all the countdown timers and everything. Anywho, that's all for today's episode of Ancient DOS Games. For episode 248, coming out next Saturday on the 22nd, we're going to be taking a look at something rather interesting. Well, I surprised a few people with the Legend of Kyrandia games in that they were inventory-based adventures coming from a company more well known for their strategy games. Well, in that same vein, the next game for ADG comes from a different developer, also known primarily for strategy games, as well as RPGs, But this next game is very much not of those genres. Now, if you think you know of a game like that, then be sure to send your guess to adg@pixelships.com, and make sure to stay tuned because we're rapidly approaching the end of Season 5. Thanks for watching, everyone, and extra special thanks to those of you supporting me on Patreon. Here's just a small sample, you guys.